launching this report today titled Buy from the Bush, Harnessing the Power of Digital Tools to Create Lasting Change in Rural Australia. Before I go on, I wanted to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I join you from today, the Whalewin people. To give you some context of this report, it's been just over 2 years since we launched Buy from the Bush, and we wanted to have a look at what impact we had had 2 years on, beyond the initial success of the campaign, to really gauge what lasting change Buy from the Bush might have inspired in rural Australia. Since its beginning, we've used digital tools like Facebook and Instagram, as well as our online marketplace, to celebrate the talent, ingenuity, and innovative nature of modern rural communities. We've asked people in the city to invest in the bush through supporting makers, creators, artists, and retailers. But what's the benefit long term? And what potential exists for rural Australia when small business in the bush is enabled? Where I live in Warren, I watched my community shrivel up in drought. Cash flow dried up, people stopped going to town, they lost their jobs, and there was enormous financial pressure. I suppose in 2022, this idea of fear and anxiety in the face of crisis and financial anxiety is well understood globally. But what I also saw in drought was people working incredibly hard to diversify their income stream, taking on more work, innovating, pivoting, and really taking risks in business. Many of them were women stepping into the workforce and stepping up into the primary income earning role. It was these businesses that was breathing life into communities that were suffering. And as the COVID pandemic struck, I saw these small businesses flex their muscles even more and extend themselves into an online market. Our report speaks to the potential of small business in rural Australia. It draws on three main sources. The first is a survey we commissioned conducted by YouGov, a market research specialist. The second was data taken from our website, and the third was surveys conducted by Instagram stories. There were three key findings in the report that I'd like to talk about. The first was that Buy from the Bush fosters the growth of female-led business, which diversifies rural economies. And there's a few stats that really reinforce this message that I'd like to highlight. The first is that 97% of Buy from the Bush businesses are owned by women, as opposed to the national average of 34%. Since its inception, we've generated over $9 million for these small businesses. 70% of the small business owners that were surveyed believe that digital business has helped women in the regions gain economic security. And 69% believe digital business presents opportunities for rural communities to grow. And these stats really excite me because of the 9 million generated, we know that the vast majority of that is going to female-led businesses operating in communities which have traditionally been focused on male-led industries like agriculture. And it's creating economic security for them, but also potentially growing rural economies more broadly. The second key finding in the report is that digitally enabled small business can crisis-proof rural communities. Now, 96% of survey respondents believe that SMBs are critical for rural communities, and I want to highlight the reasons why they believe they're critical. 85% believe that SMBs are critical for rural communities because they provide employment opportunities for local people. 74% believe it's because they improve the quality of life. 72% believe SMBs create a vibrant community. 66% believe SMBs provide economic opportunity. 61% believe they attract investment into the region. And 40% believe SMBs promote migration to the bush. These stats speak to the power of SMBs to contribute to rural communities. It's so much more than dollars and jobs. Importantly, the data also show that social media and websites were the two most useful tools to small business in crisis, with 57% saying that social media helped their business stay operational in crisis. In a survey of 635 Buy from the Bush Instagram followers, 97% said they shopped with Buy from the Bush because they were motivated by helping to crisis-proof rural communities. To me, that illustrates two things. One, that our customers understand the value of their purchase well beyond the cash register. And two, that there's enormous opportunity to be leveraged by appealing to the consumer's desire to shop with purpose. The third and final finding for the report was that Buy from the Bush is broadening people's perception of rural communities beyond the farm gate. Over 500,000 people follow Buy from the Bush and Stay in the Bush across social media. 70% of the people surveyed on our Instagram stories said that Buy from the Bush had helped to change their perception of rural communities. And there's a one-pager in the report that I would love you to have a look at because it hints at the types of change perceptions that we're creating. But in summary, our community of followers are gaining new awareness about the breadth of industry, the creativity, and the culture in the bush. And why does this matter? Not just because we're facilitating a digital dialogue between the city and the country and fostering understanding, but also because it has tangible benefits. We're engaging an audience and converting them into customers, buyers of our art, our produce, and our wares. There are clear, tangible benefits. In fact, social media drove 36% of all users to the Buy from the Bush website in the last 12 months, and on average, 32% of all transactions. So they are some of the key insights of the report. But today, we really wanted to bring them to life, those statistics, through sharing individual stories and insights of small business owners in the bush. And we're very excited to be joined today by Mr. Bruce Billson, Australian Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman, who will shortly share a little bit more about his work. We've also got 5 incredible small business owners who have launched and scaled businesses from rural Australia, and they all have their unique story to tell. We'll be joined by Chris and Nerida Cuddy from Perennial Plants, Emily Burton from Peggy and Twig, Sue Heward from Singing Magpie Produce, Emma Barrett from Emanate Creative, and Laura Hall from Philly. And finally, we're joined by Mia Garlick, Director of Public Policy at Meta, who has been a trusted partner of Buy from the Bush over the last 2 years. Thank you all for joining us. I want to stop speaking and get the focus off me and cross over to you, please. Bruce, I'd love you to tell us a little bit about your role as Ombudsman and what some of the key priorities are for you at the moment.
Grace, it's awesome to be with you and Mia, and what a fantastic group of businesses you've assembled. My role as the Australian Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman is basically to try and make sure our nation is the best place to start, grow and transform a business. We do this in a couple of ways. If businesses share with us needless headwinds or obstacles, we work hard to iron those out and get them out of the road. We provide advice to government, sometimes welcome, sometimes not, about things that could be done with policy and programs, or where the law is letting down the entrepreneurial spirit and the opportunities that are in reach that we're discussing today. And we also get involved in dispute resolution. We know when businesses are in a dispute with another business, it can be really consuming, take wind out of the sails. We get in to try and facilitate an early resolution, a dignified solution, and get the parties back to business as quickly as we can. So part of that work at the moment is really focusing on 3 of the key topics you've just touched on. I mean, this whole idea around vitality in rural and regional communities and the vital role digital tools can play. We are really jazzed about that because we've seen the impacts, not just during COVID, but in other times of challenge, where a deeper digital engagement really adds to the viability, the robustness, the preparedness of businesses to navigate unexpected times. And by goodness, haven't we had a few of those? You shared, the bushfire inspiration, the COVID lens, the flood circumstances, and even now, some of the businesses have a critical central 1 or 2 people. What happens if they're not well? What's the options? What's the game plan to make sure that those businesses can grow and prosper into the future? So we're very much focused on that. Right now, looking at deepening digital engagement because it just makes sense and is so important for future opportunities, just like you've outlined, Grace. But also looking at small business disaster preparedness and resilience. It's a difficult topic right now when we've got natural disasters right in front of us. But business owners know there's always something unexpected around the corner. How do we anticipate that? Prepare for it. Make sure our business is robust. We've got a diversification of income and opportunity so that we're not putting literally the house on one line of enterprise that might be challenged by events beyond our control. So they're the sorts of things we're doing. And Grace, you can imagine we're also providing lots of field evidence and insight to policymakers, senior bureaucrats, regulators about what small and family businesses are experiencing right now. And that's our role, and we are passionate about it because there's so many great people who are up and about helping.
Thank you, Bruce. I mean, it couldn't be more relevant than today with what is going on in northern New South Wales and southeast Queensland. It's no small job that you are doing, and I hope that today some of our insights might inform some of your work. I wondered whether you might be able to tell me what you think some of the biggest opportunities are for small businesses, particularly in the bush, as we emerge from the various crises.
Well, I think the story of the bush is one of the greatest opportunities. I mean, at this time where there's commodification of goods and services, you're getting this industrial style of meeting demand, the ability to step away from that and tell a unique and compelling story, one of purpose, as you've described, one of personal journey, or even the uniqueness of the producers, the creators, the entrepreneurs, and the region within which they operate. People want to know a little bit about that story. You know, when I was in Tasmania, I had to buy some raspberry jam. It was part of the story, you know, and what we're seeing here with rural and regional communities, people increasingly interested for the obvious lifestyle benefits, not without their challenges, but the vitality that rural and regional entrepreneurs bring is a vital part of that story. Digital tools bring customers so much closer. And as you've experienced through the Buy from the Bush campaign, the sort of enablers, the aggregators of eyeballs and customer interest brought to life through tools like Facebook and Instagram is a great way of bringing businesses that might be a little bit further away right into the lounge rooms of consumers who are thinking more carefully about how to spend their dollar. That's a great story for rural and regional Australia, and you guys are playing a vital part, and the research is bearing that out as well.
I think there's a good segue there to you, Mia, using social media, using tools like Facebook and Instagram to tell and indeed sell your story. I know you're a huge supporter of Buy from the Bush businesses because I see the merchandise, but also I wondered in your role at Meta whether you could talk to us a little bit about how you see small businesses, or what are some of the trends in small business, how people are using tools like Facebook and Instagram to grow their business.
Thanks, Grace. And it's amazing to be joined here with so many inspiring small business experts. But I guess from the platform perspective, there's really three trends that we've seen. I think the first is a big uptake in e-commerce, and not surprisingly, you know, obviously we've had so many different crises in Australia that have kept us apart over recent years. And so, you know, what we've seen is small businesses are really resourceful, and they're taking some of those free digital tools and able to still generate revenue, which is really exciting. So we've seen 77% of small business owners with a Facebook page are saying that they're still operational and they're using that Facebook page to earn a buck, which is amazing. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from Emma shortly about some of the advice that she provides for businesses on that transition as well. I think the other trend has been video content, again, because we've been unable to be together in person and sort of losing that ability to like be in a shop front or a retail environment and get that full experience. We've seen amazing innovations and ingenuity by small business owners to use live video or stories or reels to tell a little bit more about their products and connect with audiences. And I'm looking forward to hearing from Laura about her online hat parties that have been using some of the video content as well. And then lastly, I think that sense of like building that online community and taking the Bush Telegraph and, you know, making it digital and expanding it to really connect with customers, whether it's through groups or messenger. And I think we're expecting 49% of small businesses say they think they're going to increase their use of these digital tools through the other side of the pandemic. And I think it's going to be great to hear from Emily from Peggy and Twig, whose earrings I'm also proudly wearing, about some of the ways that she's been leveraging that online sense of community as well. So we're seeing lots of ingenuity and resourcefulness, and it's really inspiring when times are tough to see communities be able to come together in this way and still thrive and have success.
I think that's so, I mean, that speaks to me in terms of what we've experienced over the last little while, seeking connection through through business, really. Like it's all about, even though you're selling something, I think it really connects with people when they are connecting with the person behind your brand or product. And we see that a lot in Buy from the Bush. I wanted to go to you, Sue. You're joining us from the Riverland region of South Australia today. I wondered if you could introduce your business and tell us a little bit about how the growth of your business may have indeed helped your broader community in your region.
Yeah, thank you, Grace. It's lovely to be here today from rural South Australia. I'm a bit of the ring-in, I think, but in terms of who else is on the coverage today. But just to introduce myself, my name is Sue Huard and I am the founder of Singing Magpie Produce. And context to that, we've been running for 5 years, but we have a family orchard that is 100 years old, actually 101 years old this year, and we grow figs, grapes, quinces, and wine grapes in the Riverland, which is about 3.5 hours east of Adelaide and 8 hours west of Melbourne on the South Australian-Victorian border. And I actually left for 28 years and had a corporate life, mostly in Melbourne. And in 2016, my partner and I and daughter came back to the Riverland, and obviously came back and had no work. So for me and who I am, I created my own job, and really that was the start of Sing Magpie Produce. And, you know, our aim is to shift what we do in our orchards so that we don't just have a commodity, e.g. 40 tonne of figs, but we are sharing with consumers and community members across Australia premium produce from our orchard, but also from other orchards that we now buy from Sing Magpie Produce. And it's not just about, like you said, customers and buying and selling, but it's about a community, an online community, and for my local community as well. So I think what's quite important in terms of food production in Australia is educating consumers about where their food comes from, what it's like to grow food in Australia, but also what it's like when there's drought and what it means. So tools like Facebook and Instagram really allow that opportunity to tell your story, both our family story and the story of the Riverland. And I should say I was first introduced to Buy from the Bush in October 2019. And at that stage, you know, Singing Magpie was me and my mum on the side, really no paid employees, to be totally honest. But that completely changed in 4 days. We had that first exposure through Buy from the Bush opened us up to Australia, really. And, you know, we now have customers all over the country. And that was right in the depths of drought at that time. And very quickly we went from, you know, $40,000 worth of sales in 4 days, and we didn't have any employees. So growth happened very, very quickly in that week, and we put on our first employee back in 2019. And that growth has just continued through COVID, for many food producers that are enabled to sell online. We've just seen massive growth in the last couple of years. And then in October 2020, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And it was a very pivotal moment for me, and I'll try not to cry.
Go ahead.
But, you know, we could have stopped Singing Magpie Produce, or we could have, well, we didn't, actually. We didn't. We had a very conscious decision that this was the time to grow, which might sound crazy in the face of a cancer diagnosis. But with the support of Buy from the Bush and Meta and Facebook and Instagram, we put on more stuff. So we did exactly the opposite. So we went from 1 to 3 and then 5, a team of 5. And that allowed me to step back and obviously have cancer treatment, but also to reflect what my role is and what the potential for our business to grow. So, you know, it's not just about employment for our local area, but we now, this year, we estimate we'll buy from our own orchard and from 5 other orchards in the Riverland, probably about 10.5 tonne of fresh and dried fruit. So it's gone up 5 tonnes since the report in the last year. So we do have very fast growth. But it's also not just about that. It's about the confidence, I think, that it gives small rural businesses in a region like the Riverland that there's people out there right across Australia who are really, really interested in what you do, and in our case, in the produce that you grow in this region. So, I feel extremely privileged to be able to grow food and fruit from our orchard and support locally other businesses. But also, all the way along was the support of Buy from the Bush, really to create that exposure, but also that support when I was sick.
Thank you, Sue. It's such a remarkable story, both from a personal and professional point of view. And I have enjoyed how you've balanced telling that story through your social media channels. What I think you do incredibly is place value on the produce that your orchard produces, but also your region. And in some ways, when I follow your account, I want to get to the Riverland, I want to smell it, I want to taste it, and I want to touch it. And I think it's something so valuable that you're doing for your region also. And to me, it speaks to the potential of this beast, I suppose, into the future for other small, where primary produce meets marketing and social media and e-commerce. It's really exciting to watch.
I mean, I think that's absolutely true. It's not just about sales. It's about bringing people to the region. So suddenly your produce becomes a tourist, opportunity, really. And that's probably one of our growth areas for us personally in Sing Magpie, is how do we become more of a tourism opportunity? Watch this space.
Well, that's exciting. Actually, that it leads me well into Chris and Nerida's story at Perennial Plants. If you could tell me, you're joining us from Canowindra. I'd love you to tell us a bit about your business growth over the last couple of years, which I have so enjoyed watching, and how the growth of your online business allowed you to invest in your local community of Canowindra.
Thanks very much, Grace. We started the nursery as a mail order nursery back in 2010, and at the end of 2019, the drought was pretty severe, and there were water restrictions in every city, every town. And so having a nursery, even though we produced drought-tolerant plants, wasn't working so well. I was looking at getting a nighttime job to be able to support the family. And that's when Buy from the Bush came on board and promoted one of our posts leading into Christmas. And so some of the garden tools that we sell were then promoted, and that really saved our bacon leading into the Christmas of 2019. And then that, of course, led into the pandemic of 2020. And so we saw a huge increase in sales, up to about 1,400% increase from the previous year. And that then allowed us to start, seeing opportunities. And we saw a derelict building on the main street that we thought might actually put us in the thick of things. And so we took the plunge, got a second mortgage, bought this building. And then at the start of 2021, then we started the renovation of the building and opened in April of last year. And so what that allowed us to do was to significantly, build on the success from both Buy from the Bush and people gardening during COVID, and then allowed us to make a significant investment in our small town. So Canowindra is a town of 2,000 people. And we chose that when we were going to buy building materials, if they were available in town, we'd buy them from the local farm suppliers. And that was our way of being able to support the town. Also, if we needed paint, we didn't go to the big box place. We went to a local supplier who had Australian-made paint. And so our success meant that we could then contribute, in a financial sense, to the rest of the community while we were building and renovating the shop. But then I think the biggest investment we've made is in the people in town we've been able to employ. So we've now got 16 staff and a few more on the books that don't work as regularly. But those 16 staff work, we've got a couple of one full-timer, a couple of part-timers, and then some casuals. And so that keeps the production nursery going. It keeps the mail order going. It keeps the emporium going. We've now got a cafe. And we try and, we source our milk from Dubbo, from a single-source dairy. We get all our stuff from Orange. So as far as we possibly can, we're trying to buy stuff locally to support the blessing that we've had with our business success, and then be able to pass that on to other people. Also, when we developed our building, we're on the eastern end of the main street. And our gift for the town was to put a large 8-metre long billboard that says, "Welcome to Canowindra's historic main street." And so for people coming into town, that's the first thing that they're going to see. And that then has brought a lot of people to town. And there's been flow-on effects through the supermarkets, through, all the other businesses in town. People come and they say that they've heard about us. Someone came from the Northern Beaches and said they'd heard about us. People on the Northern Beaches in Sydney were talking about us, and so that's why they came to Canowindra. So I think it's been a real blessing to be able to use, the success that we've had and share that with our local community as well as everyone who comes to town.
It's so inspiring. Having driven through Canowindra before and after your development, I can say it is quite an investment in the streetscape. And you haven't mentioned that there's a grand piano in the Emporium and that you sometimes have concerts, which I just find the most exciting part about it. And I can't wait to come to one. Thank you, Chris, for sharing your story. I'll move to you, Em, from Peggy and Twig. You moved from a regional centre to a farm further west in a smaller community to be with your farming partner. I wonder how having your jewellery business, Peggy and Twig, influenced that decision, or did it influence that decision, and what has it meant for you personally and professionally?
Yeah, see, I was a teacher in Orange for about 6 years, and my career has always been really important to me. And while I was teaching in Orange, I was staying at a farm, and I quickly realised that if it was going to go any further, I would be the one to move, because you can't really move for others, generally. And so I thought, okay, this could be interesting. So I asked my boss for a year of unpaid leave, and I thought I'd give it a go. And I came out and I did a few different things. And it was in that year that Grace, from the Bush, she shared a post of mine of what was a hobby, Peggy and Twig, making jewellery. Just me on the side on weekends while I was teaching. And it was and so that happened and everything exploded. And in about 3 months, I had made and even more my independent school teaching salary. And I was going back to school the following year, and I thought, wow, I wonder will this keep going? And it did. And so that really empowered me to actually go back to my job in Orange and finish up. And a permanent job in teaching was hard to come by then. And so it was a big deal, but everyone thought I was mad. But I knew the figures, and I knew I wasn't mad, and I knew that it was professionally and personally just the best move for me. And so that was so empowering. But, I wouldn't have been able to do it without social media. I wouldn't have done it if From the Bush hadn't grabbed my post. And so I feel really fortunate. And interestingly, with social media, I've actually purchased a building in Trenny this time last year, and it was an old stock and station agent. And I loved the symmetry of the building in the main street, and I thought I could do something with that. And it came up for sale, and I purchased it. And I have put the whole renovation on Instagram over the past 12 months, and I really think that that's generated what you were saying, Bruce, the story, the story behind the brand. I think that people are really interested in what I've done and the progression of it, and so I think that that's benefited my business in a funny old way in itself. I think you're right, the story is a big part of the brand, and I think people look at a chair that I've posted on a story in my workroom and store, and they associate it with a pair of pearls, and then if they think about I need a gift, they'll buy a pair of pearls. I mean, I'm told that's how people have thought. So I think that's quite amazing.
I think, Em, you're a classic example of building your business online through Facebook and Instagram and through your website, and then that leading to a really tangible asset for a small rural community. Buying a building on the main street is no small thing. It's beautifying the small town, but it's also, another place to stop on the road for people travelling further west. And that as a resident of this area, it excites me. But it's also been incredibly inspiring to watch. And I do think you've told your story from hobby to, incredible fashion accessory label, run and scaled from Western New South Wales so well. So congratulations. I want to move to Laura, who you're joining us from Scone today, and you've grown another fashion label, Philly, from the Hunter region of New South Wales. And I wondered what you think, or how you think small business owners can harness the power of social media and digital tools to grow their business from the bush. Can you tell us, some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Grace. So I think that, we've spoken quite a fair bit today about story and really how, we communicate that. But I think if you take a step back, really knowing your why as a business is a really key part of unpacking that story process. So for Philly, our story, our why is to inspire and excite people every day. So if you know your why and you've also identified, I guess, what your clear sort of business values are, so what really motivates and drives you in your brand, those are two really key points of communication. So for Philly, it's sustainability and fashion, it's working and growing our community, be it our Philly community, our Scone community, our regional, and then within Australia. There's the detail of creating really conscious product that's high quality, that can be worn across a number of different events and occasions. So there's some of them to name them, but I think that when you know your why and you know your business values, you can structure your entire social media narrative based on those. And I think that when you have a really clear communication strategy around what it is that you're trying to create on social, that's part of the story that people can then really connect with. I think that you can then look at the networking element of social media. You look at like-minded people in industry, how you connect with those people, that brings you back to that why and those values. But I think that Buy from the Bush is a classic example where for me, it's really been I've connected with Buy from the Bush in saying that, it's really like that gold tick, that star, that tick of approval, where people can go to Buy from the Bush and say, okay, this is a brand and a business that already has that, confidence. And so you can leverage off the conversation of people within Buy from the Bush, like the team and what you guys are creating, but really how, you can then network, within the Buy from the Bush network of people too. So like-minded creatives, customers looking to share in that narrative. I think that it's really about, seeing how you can connect with people who, are looking for that story. They're looking for that regional story. How are they going to do that? Through like-minded people or groups like Buy from the Bush, on social. So I think that that's been a really big one for Philly. But in saying that as well, at Philly, I've been really fortunate through Buy from the Bush to connect with a number of incredible creatives in marketing, in PR, in photography, everything from web design to marketing to how you get your brand and business out there. Those are not things that I personally, have as a background. I make hats, so I know what I'm good at, and then I lean into my network to really ensure that the people who are like-minded and who get what I'm trying to create can help me to take that to that next level. And it's really how we've managed to connect with celebrities, large-scale Australian-known businesses, collaborations with Australian heritage brands, all of the really exciting things that we can do that allow other people to then see what we're doing and hopefully, they can connect with and get excited and inspired about too.
You're really shifting the perspective of what is produced in the bush, what fashion in rural communities looks like. And I think,
yes,
when you get a top tier Hollywood celebrity wear a beautiful handmade hat from Scone, from Philly, there's something about, I think that speaks volumes in terms of, where this community, as you put it, is going and how we're growing, because it's not just, it's not just jams and hand knitted garments like I think that people expect. There's so much more, and building a premium fashion label from the bush is possible, and in fact, probable with all the creatives and talent that we have out here. So over to you, Emma. You own a graphic design agency in Dubbo, New South Wales, and have recently launched a creative co-working space also in Dubbo. As we emerge from drought in our area, I really watched as your business went from strength to strength. And I wondered whether you could talk to us about what inspired some of that growth, and also what opportunities arise for creatives when small businesses in small communities decide to go online and grow their digital presence.
Thanks, Grace. Yeah, exactly. The original COVID lockdowns were probably one of the pivotal points where my business saw the most growth. And a lot of the businesses that I work with are female-led or female entrepreneurial businesses, particularly in the retail and the food and wine industry. Having their physical doors closed, they then needed to create that that customer experience virtually. So that's where we came on board and helped them create that experience through packaging or social media templates, creating visually appealing websites. So that was a huge growth. In terms of the ripple effect that happened once these clients of mine saw that growth in sales, then they were able to sort of take on some extra people. They spent more money in their community, and then they started to create their own content. So rather than relying on stockist photos previously provided to them, we helped them engage with local photographers and videographers and create their unique content for social media, which again, that just helped elevate their own businesses in the digital space, which can be quite a crowded space. And I think the beauty about that also allowed the distance and the physical address of your business wasn't such an issue anymore. So you were all on sort of very level, even playing ground, and that's where we can help elevate their business in that space. I was also able to employ 2 contract designers. The talent for designers locally were a little thin on the ground, but I had a remote team, and then I've employed a full-time designer last year. And because my team has physically grown, another business friend of mine, we opened a creative workspace in Dubbo. So we have currently 8 other women in a cross-section of professional services who share our wonderful high-speed internet because the internet is not great. And we're just in a creative space that allows ideas to be shared and people to run their business from a professional workspace.
Thank you. It's so cool to hear that. And I think from an observer's perspective, I see you, both your creative output that, I see you producing elevates everybody out here, everybody in small business thinking, well, I better do it professionally because, this standard exists now. But it also just the idea that you're launching a creative space with other business women, there's some sort of non-tangible benefit of that you may not even realise, just inspiring the community of entrepreneurs in your presence, watching you take a risk and take a leap of faith and build something locally that didn't really exist before. So congratulations for that, and thanks for sharing your story with us. I wanted to I'm very conscious of time, but I just wanted to take a minute because we do have Bruce's ear today. If we could just in 2 words, if I could go around the group, and if you could tell me what the most challenging thing is for doing business in the bush in 2022, and if we could go in the same order that we went in the first time, just to keep it simple. So the biggest challenge of doing business in the bush in 2022, if you could share that with us, starting with you, Sue.
For me, it's absolutely about scaling up in a responsible way, from being a micro business to one where we can grow responsibly?
For me, the biggest challenge this year is going to be coming up with systems so that I can maximise the efficiency and the talent of my team. Now that there's a much bigger team that we have on board.
For me this year, my biggest challenge will be to build a team so that I can delegate and make sure that I'm covering all bases in my business and that everyone has a fairly good work-life balance.
For me, Grace, I think 2022 has started as, probably to say the least, a pretty heavy year. So I think that probably the hardest things to sort of see business as this year would be keeping the motivation and the energy high, really staying positive and connected with everyone. It's been a long 2 years, through COVID and the way that the year is starting. So I think that being able to stay connected with like-minded people, keep the energy high, keep the momentum going. I think that we've got such amazing successes off the back of the last 2 years. It's just really seeing that consistency and growth come through off the back of the enthusiasm and the energy, being there. So,
and Emma?
Sourcing experienced creatives. And sort of proving to them that you don't need to be in the city to have a creative career. So, yes, just looking at whether that's through apprenticeships or a mentorship. Creating those opportunities.
Thank you. That's wonderful. I wondered, Bruce, did you have anything to add to what you've heard, or did you want to ask any questions on the back of that?
Well, I just think it's really insightful what the business owners are saying, in that it's a recognition of what's got us to here might not get us to there, and it's a combination of talent, of working on the business, not in it. Chris's point was a very good one about systems and making all that hum quite well, and Emma's talking about, as Sue did, about building out the talent and getting the bits of the scale story together. That's really a challenge for businesses that have found a niche or established themselves well, have good trajectory, but what's that next stage? What's that next step? And it does come back to, what's your why? Some people don't want to grow a behemoth business. They want to grow a business of a type and a scale and a character that's a reflection of what they're about and the community they're a part of. That's a moment of reflection as well. So really good contributions from the panel, Grace. Super to draw that out.
Absolutely. Well, that is it. That brings us to a close. Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing your stories with us. I know it was brief, but it had an impact, and you continue to inspire me and the Bike from the Bush team through carving out really meaningful and important careers from rural Australia. So congratulations to all the small business owners. Thank you, Bruce, for joining us, for listening to us, and for sharing your work with us. And to Mia, for sharing your meta insights, but more broadly for your ongoing support of Bike from the Bush since the start. Thank you for your investment in us, but more broadly, or by extension, small business in the bush. We really appreciate it. In exciting news also, Meta is going to be joining us in Dubbo for a Boost with Facebook / Bike from the Bush training workshop in the flesh. It'll be a great opportunity at the end of this month on the 31st of March. So I will bring you more detail about that, but I just wanted to mention it for everyone's sake. And to close, I suppose, this report today and the stories we've heard from the businesses paint a pretty exciting picture about where the bush is in 2022, but also where it's going. And I hope that you all stay with us and continue supporting small business, because it is a true investment in the future of rural Australia.